Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good morning to you and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Alexis Rogers. Phil has the day off. We have lots to talk about this morning, and we start with the major developments in the fight against COVID-19. Now, this week, Indiana surpassed 15,000 confirmed deaths from COVID-19. The White House is touting its work on vaccines as a new AP poll shows 51% of Americans support the Biden plan for an employer-based vaccine mandate. The White House vaccines coordinator was in Indianapolis this week talking to health leaders about boosting vaccination rates. He also sat down one-on-one with News 8's Kylie Conway.
So you came into this immunization campaign midway through, where President Biden was vowing 100 million vaccinations, first doses within 100 days. When you heard those numbers and saw what lied in front of you, what were your initial thoughts, and then following that, frustrations?
Well, from day one, we wanted to make sure that we continue to improve access to the vaccine, and we continue to build confidence in the vaccine, and do that while keeping equity at the center of everything we do. And that's really drove a lot of our work from day one in this administration. And you look back, now we have more than 212 million people in this country with at least one shot of the vaccine. You have 3 out of 4 people in this country who are eligible to get a vaccine with at least one shot. So we've made tons and tons of progress. And yet we still have about 70 million people in this country who are eligible, but they're not yet vaccinated. And we have to continue to double down on things that work and add new strategies so that we can get this group vaccinated. This is our path to putting the pandemic behind us.
How do you handle the conversations with people? Just yesterday here in downtown Indianapolis, there was a protest against mandates, mask mandates, as well as vaccination mandates that the Biden administration has declared. How do you handle conversations with those people who really see it very black and white, that this is not something that I should be forced to do, and it's not something that I want to do?
Here's how I look at it. The group that's still undecided about the vaccine is not a homogeneous group. For some, they still have legitimate questions, and talking to their doctor is important. For others, an incentive would get them over the edge and just get that commitment. Others were waiting for the vaccines to be fully approved by the FDA. Well, now that time has come. And for others, we know that they are waiting for their employers to tell them to get vaccinated. And then over the last several weeks, we've had hundreds of healthcare systems, universities, businesses put vaccine requirements in place, and we know those work. I mean, look at United Airlines. From 59% to 98% in a matter of a couple of months of their employees vaccinated once they put their mandates in place. Active duty military from 76% to 94% in just a few weeks. And you look at universities, University of Michigan, Rutgers University, University of Vermont, all over 95% of people vaccinated. And we know vaccine requirements work. We know the American public support vaccine requirements, and poll after poll after poll, 6 out of 10 people in this country support vaccine requirements. It is the right thing to do, and it's one tool in our toolbox. This is one added strategy to help us on top of one-on-one conversations, trusted messengers, and all the other things that we know work.
I mean, a perfect segue into the topic of misinformation. Some states are declaring it a public health emergency, all the misinformation that is out there. What is your frustration with misinformation, and how prevalent do you see it is as a contributing factor to people not getting vaccinated?
Well, it is definitely a contributing factor. It is unfortunate that we're seeing so much misinformation out there. And what concerns me is not just the misinformation, it's the scale of the misinformation, it's the spread, it's the sophistication, and we all have a role to play to make sure that people are getting facts, people are getting answers. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with folks across the country, and even with my Uber drivers today here in Indianapolis. People telling me, well, I've seen a video online about somebody getting paralyzed from the vaccine, or I've seen this, and I've heard this, and I've read this. There's tons of misinformation out there, and we all have a role to play to make sure that people are getting facts.
What are the sources behind the misinformation? Is it genuine people who actually believe this, or is it some sort of sabotage?
It's hard to predict. I think it's a combination of it all. I think we do all have a responsibility. That's why the Surgeon General issued an advisory to what people need to do to be able to fight misinformation. Any person, before they're forwarding information, it's important we check to see what's the source of information. Is it trusted source before we start spreading it? Doctors, nurses have a role to play to make sure they're talking out the facts, they're providing the facts on social media, they're doing interviews, they're being quoted in the newspapers. News channels have a responsibility to make sure that we're putting information out there. So we all have a role to play to make sure that accurate information is out there.
Just this week, Pfizer announced that it has submitted its data to the FDA for emergency use authorization for children 5 and older, possibly making that available next month. Do you think that is achievable? And to teachers, what do you have to say about how this could change in-person learning and the reliability upon that?
Well, I did hear yesterday that Pfizer did submit their data to the FDA. Remember, they still have to submit a full application. That still has to go through that same process that we've just talked about with the advisory committee, the advisory committees, the CDC, the FDA. And once we get a determination, I will trust the outcome of that determination. I don't have a crystal ball as to when exactly that might happen. I would think in mid to late fall probably, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. I think it's really important to know that we have tools in our toolbox now to make sure we're protecting those 5 to 11 years old. It starts by making sure that we're creating spaces around them where everyone is vaccinated. Their older siblings, their parents, the teachers, the bus drivers. It's really important that we do that. And in schools, the CDC has been very clear of what would it take for us to be able to open schools safely in this country. And this is about vaccination, it's about testing, it's about ventilation, and it's about universal indoor masking. So we know what would it take for us to open schools safely. We know what would it take to keep those 5 to 11 protected until they become eligible for a vaccine.
Once it is FDA approved for children, fully approved, like the adult version, will there be a recommendation from the Biden administration to require the COVID-19 vaccine in children?
We're going to have to wait that process to play out and see how that would play out. Remember, vaccine requirements in schools are local and state level decisions. They're not federal level decisions, but our point has always been we know that vaccine requirements work, and we'll continue to do everything we can to support locals and states making those decisions when it's appropriate.
And on the issue of vaccine mandates, Indiana Republican Congressman Jim Banks says he wants to block the president's plan before it even gets started. Banks has introduced a bill that would prohibit OSHA from making any rules on COVID vaccinations or testing in the workplace. He calls the mandate an unconstitutional and un-American overreach by President Biden. The bill is not likely to get a hearing in the Democratic-controlled House. Coming up, the battle over spending in Washington. Congress avoids a government shutdown, but what will it take to raise the debt ceiling? We go one-on-one with Senator Todd Young next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. As we turn our attention to the showdown over federal spending, Congress approved a spending measure to keep the government open until December, avoiding a potential shutdown. Only one of Indiana's Republican members of Congress voted for the bill, Senator Todd Young. A vote on raising the debt ceiling may be a bit different, though. Our All Indiana Politics team talked to the senator about the vote to raise the debt ceiling, and for now, he's a no.
You know, it's a serious issue. Of course, our federal government puts the full faith and credit of the United States of America before all the obligations it incurs, and therefore, it's essential that whatever party is in power goes ahead and does the right thing and raises the debt limit, which is something that whenever I've been in the majority, I have done. Typically, if you want some assistance from the minority party, which is not essential here, this can be accomplished just by the majority, then you have to make some accommodation to their needs. In the past, the Democrats have insisted upon some more spending. Republicans have insisted upon more budget controls so that we bring our revenues in line with expenditures. But the Democrats aren't prepared to give Republicans anything. So I know they'll do the right thing, and they'll go ahead and stand behind the roughly $7 trillion they propose spending by themselves this year. They can raise the debt ceiling by themselves as well.
What concessions would you like to see to be able to say, yes, we should raise the debt ceiling?
I want a budget plan, bringing revenues in line with expenditures. I want some say, a significant say, about the spending that we are engaged in. And I think we need some structural changes to the largest programs of government, which are unsustainable. There's been a complete abdication of leadership on this front. And unfortunately, these are the sorts of things, Brady, that are typically handled through congressional committees. But instead, the Democrats have chosen to put together multi-trillion-dollar pieces of legislation behind closed doors in smoke-filled rooms.
So we asked this question of Senator Braun last week, so I want to ask it directly to you as well. Do Republicans share blame for the current situation of where the national debt is?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for decades, Republicans and Democrats alike have known that the largest programs of government are unsustainable. They failed to act and act boldly. This is why I thought it really important, right when I came into the U.S. Senate, to sign on to legislation that would bring some of these programs into balance in a bipartisan way. Unfortunately, there hasn't been enough political courage to move forward with that legislation. But if we'd start including some of those things in a debt ceiling vote, a number of us would take a second look at it. But I candidly don't anticipate that's going to happen, Brady. I would emphasize that what the Democrats are considering doing this year is unprecedented. $7 trillion of expenditure when you have a growing economy is absolutely unprecedented. They're trying to do it in a 50-50, equally divided Senate with the tie broken by Vice President Harris. To put that money in perspective, that's roughly $1 million of credit card debt that we're passing on to every man, woman, and child in the state of Indiana.
Let's also share this with you from Indiana Democrat Andre Carson. He says it's very disappointing that Republican gamesmanship almost caused an unnecessary, devastating shutdown during times that are already tough. He goes on to say in his statement that Americans elected Democrats to govern and to enact transformative change. That is what we will continue to do. Coming up, pushing for COVID vaccine mandates throughout the country, we debate the president's plan with our political experts next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in Whitley Gates with the Indiana Republican Party and Brian Gaddy, former political director for the Indiana Democratic Party. Both of you, thank you so much for being here with us today. Let's go ahead and get started with the vote on government spending and President Biden's infrastructure package. Brian, it seems like it's Democrats holding it back and not Republicans.
Well, we have Senator Sinema of Arizona and Senator Manchin of West Virginia. They have their particular parochial concerns. And I do think in the end, we're going to get it worked out. Senator Manchin, some of the questions that he's asking, you can kind of tell he's just trying to work out something that the overall Senate Democrats can go along with. But I think in the end, Senator Sinema and Senator Manchin will be on board, and Majority Leader Schumer will be able to get them across the finish line. So I think in the end, we'll get it done as Democrats.
Whitley, I see you nodding your head there. Your response?
As I stated earlier on All Indiana Politics, the Democratic Party of today is really splintering. When you look at the progressives and where they want to go versus where the moderates are, it's seeming like they can't come to any type of an agreement that's going to be beneficial for the country. So you see liberals, currently revolting against liberals. And I'm wondering, as they're trying to restore the soul of the nation, how this is helpful or beneficial for the American people.
I mean, I think we definitely see a lot of conversations happening about this. Whitley, I'm going to keep with you here. Are Republicans playing a dangerous game by not voting for the debt limit increase? You've heard the concerns that it could lead to a recession.
I mean, I think we're already headed towards the recession. They've been touting the great American comeback like it's supposed to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And the truth is, all of the numbers show that unemployment is consistently rising. And so I'm trying to figure out how and why we're coming back. I don't think that the Democrats are playing a dangerous game. As I stated last time, the Biden administration currently couldn't plan their way out of a paper bag. And so they're going to continue to put larger and larger spending bills on the table. They're going to pack it with all the pork that they can, and then they're going to hope that we pass it and then consistently and continually increase the debt ceiling without any type of strategic plan to really address the issues here in this country.
You know, Brian, I want to go to you because earlier in the show we actually heard from Mr. Young about this very thing. What's your response?
Well, first of all, Senator Young is very hypocritical in the sense that he voted several times to raise the debt when former President Donald Trump was in the White House. He didn't seem to have a problem with raising the debt then. All of a sudden now he is in typical Republican hypocrisy. He's a born-again fiscal conservative. They seem to love to do that. As I've stated before in previous debates with Whitley, when we Democrats get the White House, all of a sudden Republicans get born-again fiscal conservatives. They find religion on fiscal matters. But when they're in the White House, they're profligate spenders. It's just phony and hypocritical. And Senator Young, we Democrats are going to point out your hypocrisy. I'm sure you're watching, and we will point it out to Hoosiers, and we'll make you own your record, my friend. We're going to make you own your record.
Whitley, I see you shaking your head again. Your response.
I mean, let's just be honest. The truth of the matter is, when they were raising the debt ceiling, we were in the midst of a global pandemic, and we're supposed to be on recovery and on bounce back from that global pandemic. And now we have two bills, over $3 trillion on the table, and we're going to raise the debt ceiling once again without a plan on how we are going to get America actually back on track, how we're going to get people back to work, how we are going to mitigate the damages that COVID has caused and continually causes. What is the plan besides spend more money and raise the debt ceiling and inflation going up? We don't have that plan.
Well, we do have a plan. It's a Build Back Better, and our Build Back Better plan is already showing positive effects for not just Hoosiers, but Americans in general. With our infrastructure plan, we're going to be able to build roads, bridges, broadband for rural areas. Republicans claim to be the party for rural Americans, but they don't do anything for rural Americans. We Democrats are going to provide high-speed broadband for rural Americans. We're going to be able to put several Americans in general are going to benefit from this plan of Build Back Better America. The Republican plan, what is the Republican plan besides just tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires? That's their plan, just tax cuts for billionaires and billionaires.
But quickly, before we go to the next thing, Whitley, what would be the plan on the Republican side here?
Ribbons. And this week alone, Governor Holcomb announced the Next Level Connection program to provide broadband for rural and underserved and unserved areas. So I find it hilarious that that was the topic that you chose to really, stake your horse on when literally in the state house.
And CNBC voted the state of Indiana. They gave us a D+, an F for our workforce rating, and a D+ for our education rating. And we are not up to par when you compare us to our sister states and states like California when it comes to infrastructure. We're behind, and Governor Holcomb knows it. And you can't run from your record. We're going to make you own your record.
Quickly here, I want to jump in real quick. Let's talk about the fight against COVID-19. Whitley, you heard that the White House talking about these mandates being effective. They're moving forward with the plan. Do you believe that the mandate will ever actually go into effect?
No, I don't. And I'm actually thoroughly disappointed in a lot of the mandates that the Biden administration has been making, from mandating that federal employees and contractors and military personnel must be vaccinated. I think this entire mandate frenzy is replacing people's right to choose, which I thought the left absolutely loved. I thought it's my body, my choice, except for when it comes to vaccines and allowing people to make decisions that are best for them and best for their life. We know that the hesitancy disproportionately affects minority communities, specifically the Black community. And so to force people who are currently attempting to recover from a pandemic to get a vaccine that they may not feel comfortable with, or maybe just don't trust, to me just seems asinine. It doesn't feel—
Real quick.
What's
15 seconds,
asinine,
Brian, please respond.
What's asinine is this vaccine First of all, you all on the right, the Republicans trumpeted this vaccine, and yet now you don't want to take it. And yet the numbers, the Delta variant numbers, are spiking.
Whitley,
especially in
Brian,
red
thank you so
states.
much. We got to go. Till next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. Have a great rest of your weekend.